Wild confessions on paternity court.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but there was no sex in the car. It was under a bridge. My son is a bridge baby.
I had sex with his brother. We had a threesome, so there's three possibilities, three possible fathers of my daughter.
We have a wife here whose husband was tooting the same old tune, that he didn't father baby Tanea, as he had previously caught Miss Dixon cheating on him, and now the marriage was on the line. This guy certainly knew how to hold a grudge.
He would leave and stay gone sometimes for periods of time. I left for a month. I cheated. He had caught me, actually. Had caught me cheating.
In the act?
In the act, yes.
Yes.
Cheating is cheating, people, whether you hide it or you do it out of spite. Turns out Mr. Hunt caught his wife red-handed while she was off gallivanting in the parking lot, in front of the house she shared with the husband. That woman has guts.
So when I walk to the car, I hear the noises and I knock on the window and she blatantly give me the look like, "And so what? You see what I'm doing?"
And what was she doing?
Cheating. She was with the guy doing whatever she wanted to do.
So your wife was having sex with another man in a car out front of your house?
Yes.
You were trying to get caught.
Yeah.
The bummer was that the identity of the other guy was still a mystery, which brought up the conception timeline. Unshockingly, we did see that coming. But wait, there's more, as the defendant thinks that it was a high chance that his own brother was the father.
Everything else just went out of the window. I was just happy that I was having a baby girl.
And so at what point does the doubt kick in?
When I'm thinking about the time and I'm realizing that I was gone during the whole month of June. I got back basically July 1st and
No.
I left
How
the
were
whole
you,
month
how
of
did
June.
you
I
get
did
back
not
in
come
July?
Miss Dixon refused that the guy was his brother, thankfully. Moving on, baby mama and daddy brought forward their witnesses to back up their versions of the story, which was no help at all, as it was just nasty finger pointing.
I admitted to it being a
this is
possibility of the guy I slept with, not sleeping with
Okay.
your brother.
Okay,
That's overboard.
You
So
do
I can
believe
flip.
that it's a possibility that your brother could be Tanea's biological
Yes,
father?
I'm saying, and if not that, then it's a possibility that they slept together. And if that's not the case, then
I need an apology on both ends.
To make some sense of this mess, his brother was brought up on the podium. The way he looked, he just couldn't wait for all this to be over. Well, that makes all of us. Mr. Hunt's brother, Chris, accepted he stayed with his brother's wife, but was pretty confident when he denied any sort of physical intimacy. All is not lost, I guess.
Did your brother, Mr. Hunt, know you were there at the time?
No, ma'am.
You potentially could have gotten into a sexual relationship with Miss Dixon and could be Tanea's biological father. Do you believe you are Tanea's biological father?
No, ma'am.
Do you admit to having a sexual relationship with Miss Dixon?
No, ma'am.
You did not.
No.
Things took an emotional turn as Mr. Hunt poured his heart out regarding the paternity doubt. He had been sad and miserable since the birth of baby Tanea, as the thorn of not being the father kept pricking him in the side, while he missed the golden moments of his baby.
look at this child. When I'm up at night, I'm staring at this child, not because how beautiful it is, but is this my child? I shouldn't be looking at my child like, is this my child? And she's smiling back at me, but I'm studying like, is that my smile? Instead, oh, that's beautiful.
So you're physically present, but you're not emotionally present.
No.
And your mind is always somewhere else.
Yes.
It was time to get to the bottom of this confusion and open the envelope that held the key to their marriage and the fate of baby Tanea. A lot was at stake. So, let's get on with those results.
You are not the father. You are not the biological.
No.
Who the daddy, Janae?
No, it's no possibility of nobody else being her dad.
After being betrayed by his wife and brother, the plaintiff was left under the crumbling debt of $43,000 for child support, while the swindling better half was persistent that the elder Vogel at the podium was the father.
Currently owe $43,000 in child support,
ma'am.
and you claim to know who his father is. You will return to your home state to get this enormous debt erased.
Yes.
Fasten your seatbelts for some wild revelations, people. Here we go. It turned out that the plaintiff, right from the start, suspected his brother to be the baby daddy of the defendant's son, as he knew that his wife was snooping around with him, to which the ex-missus agreed.
Who do you believe his father is?
My brother, David. She had sex with my brother in my car in a parking lot in Janesville, Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but there was no sex in the car. It was under a bridge. My son is a bridge baby.
you're admitting that you were intimate with his brother.
Yes, ma'am.
Turns out, the marriage that these guys shared was not all hunky-dory. I mean, obviously. But Mr. Vogel suspected that the woman cheated with someone from the family for sure. But who would think that she would get it on with his brother? Now that is devious.
William was born during your marriage,
Yes, Your Honor.
so you would be presumed to be the father.
Yes, Your Honor.
So during the time in which Ms. Vogel is pregnant, do you believe William is your child during that time? Do you know about this sex with your brother?
I had a thought that it was somebody in my family, and I figured it was probably my brother.
If you thought that cheating with your husband's brother was wrong, wait till you hear this. The woman divorced the husband and after 3 years, married the infamous brother she cheated with. Oh gosh, what was this woman high on?
To talk to her for a little while. I stayed with her for like 3 or 4 days, and she told me the story of the car, and I guess just to get me mad and get me going, and that she had sex with my brother. After 3 years, we got married.
So then you married his brother?
Yeah, 3 years after I divorced.
Going through the backdrop of the story, we found out that he was the black sheep of the family. Mother and son both used some colorful adjectives to describe his smooth talking, and by the sound of it, he did seem like a slippery dude. The type one ought to stay far, far away from. If only Mommy had known that sooner.
You'd have to actually get a better understanding of his brother, David. He's got a sly tongue. He's got a snake's tongue. He could pretty much talk anybody into generally anything. So I wouldn't doubt what my mother is saying. I haven't had a secure thought in years. She came to me and she told me there's a possibility that David could be my father.
Turns out, the mother wasn't that great either, as she kept changing William's father every decade. Initially, he was led to believe that Mr. David was the father, but since the guy was all talk and no show, Mommy made her final pick with Mr. Daniel. And now, the guy was under the enormous debt.
David was my father, and then all of a sudden my mother had kind of come to me when I was 5 and gave me a better understanding that my Uncle Daniel might have been my father. Then she basically told me that he was my father. I had a lot of head trips at that point in time, didn't really understand it.
Mr. Vogel, Daniel here is the one paying child support for you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh man, I sure do feel bad for both Mr. Daniel and Mr. Williams, as they were paying the most in this mess. And as far as we've seen, it's always the child who endures the most. Still, the good part was that the young man still had his spirit high. Kudos to him for that.
So my understanding of it was David was my father because he was the one raising me, but Daniel was my biological father.
You're in a situation where your uncle could be your father, but your father could be your uncle.
Yes, Your Honor.
Either way, your uncle is either way.
Either way, my uncle's my father.
Either way.
Jumping back to the year 1984, we got to see the good times of Miss Vogel when she chose her husband's birthday, the prime time, for cheating with his brother. Yeesh, cold, woman, cold. The timeline head-tripped everyone, as the mommy was hopping between both men.
Did you really have sex with his brother on his birthday, Ms. Vogel?
Yes, Your Honor, I did.
When was William born?
November 17th. Well, Your Honor, what really made the difference is I was gone and I came home on the 27th. We moved there on the 1st of March.
Coming up next was an emotional moment between the former married couple. Mr. Daniel Vogel ended up forgiving Miss Vogel for all the hurt she'd caused him. Watch how Judge Lake brought the bridge thing come to full circle.
I thank you for that. That's okay. That's all forgiven, Donna. It's forgiven.
That's what I want to see under the bridge. Because I don't think we can undervalue the power of just forgiveness.
William had suffered enough these last 30 years of playing the guessing game of his own biological father between two brothers. It's about time he got some real answers, and the DNA results are gonna give that to him. Time to open that envelope.
Mr. Daniel Vogel, you are his father.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Finally, brother.
This baby mama here was persistent that the father of baby Viviana was Mr. Blackman, who as usual refused. Yada yada yada, nothing new here. However, the baby daddy suspected two other guys to be the father, as Miss Johnson had intimate relations with them as well. But soon, the number of potential daddies went from 2 to 3.
But you say you believe the defendant, Mr. Blackman, is her biological father.
That's right, Your Honor.
Ms. Johnson had a sexual relationship with 2 other men. You fear one of those men are the child's father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Blackman reminisced about the ways and life he spent in Houston following the charming words of his father. Turns out that fatherly wisdom was nothing but insulting to women and catered only to the men. Didn't know some people still resided in the dark ages.
Really don't care about the women in Houston.
Please explain that. You don't care about any of the women in
my dad a Casanova, and he taught us 2 rules. One rule was nobody mess with anybody's girl, and that second rule was nobody has a girl. You understand? So
apparently, baby mama was in a pretty good place before she met Mr. Blackman. Upon falling for the instant connection she shared with him, Miss Johnson dropped the previous boyfriend and moved in with the new one. The twist was that within weeks, these guys ended up in a threesome with the brother.
I was driving the high-end cars. I was going to the nicest restaurants. Me and my son had no need or want for anything. I jumped out of a relationship with my ex to be with him because there was an instant connection. And 2 weeks after I moved in with the defendant, I had sex with his brother. We had a threesome. So there's 3 possibilities, 3 possible fathers of my daughter.
Turns out Mr. Blackman believed that men can be promiscuous, but the women cannot. Seriously? Baby Daddy certainly had no regard for women as he grew up on those baseless ideologies, and we know certain notions don't sit right with Judge Lake. So she reminded him of his place. Yep.
women not supposed to be like you. If you act like that, you get treated like that.
Men ain't supposed to be like you.
You get treated like that.
It sounds like the pot calling the kettle black. You're not supposed to have any regard for any girl. You meet a girl, you have a connection, you wind up letting your brother have sex with her, you all have a threesome.
Out with the old, in with the new. The baby mama had that threesome with the guy and his brother. However, the catch was that she wasn't aware that the guy suggested this arrangement as a test to prove her worth to him, and he had tested multiple women the same way in the past. What kind of demented tests do people have these days?
Me and my brother, Mr. Gross, have done that before. So it was a test to her, and she failed the test, honestly. I could open the door, and my brother, Mr. Gross, standing there butt naked. I mean, honestly, because I didn't want to look like a punk to my brother, you know, I guess it was peer pressure. I just joined the party because that's what we do.
Well, it turns out Mr. Gross was indeed gross. Apparently his father was a Rolling Stone, and he raised this fella on some questionable ideologies, where women were just like fish to men. Don't believe me? See for yourself.
He just told you we the way we was raised. Like my dad, he call it fishing. You throw the bait in, if the fish catch it, if it's a good fish, you keep it. But if it's not a good fish, you throw it back. You know.
And then what if it gets fried, like the both of you? Miss Johnson, how many times were you intimate with Mr. Gross?
Twice.
Following these shocking events, we got to see Mr. Blackman getting his manly feelings hurt over the fact that Mr. Gross and Miss Johnson slept together 10 times, while he believed it was just the one time in his presence. Uh-oh, he got played.
More than 10 times, you say?
Bro, quit playing.
It was.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
Okay,
I'm
hold
not gonna
on.
lie to you, bro. You know, I made a mistake.
This is new to you. I can tell, Mr. Blackman.
It was your idea.
So you had sex with my brother more than 10 times?
It was
or
twice.
She told me that it happened once. Now she telling me it happened
No,
twice.
I told
Now
you
he
it was
telling me it
twice.
happened 10 times. I don't know who to believe.
Next up, we get the Filipino mother up on the stage who clearly disapproved of the ways of her wild child. Mother had warned her daughter to not end up like women who have multiple partners. But we know that advice clearly didn't work.
I'm not raised like that, so I sent her to Philippines so she could learn a lesson, our tradition. She never.
Blah, 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 blah.
We have established that you don't have any respect for yourself. You will respect your mother. Did she tell you at that time whether or not she knew who the father was?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Blackman was sure the child wasn't his, based on the fact that his other kids don't look like Viviana at all. But we know that evidence is just circumstantial. Moreover, it was revealed that Mr. Blackman and Miss Johnson were engaged to be married, to which Mr. Gross had a laugh, as he wasn't aware of this development, even when he was asked to be the best man.
Do you all have a relationship?
Yes, Your Honor. We're engaged.
Y'all engaged? We was engaged until I found out she had sex with my brother more than 10 times in this courtroom today, Your Honor.
That's why you asked me to
not
be your
true.
best man?
So
The
right
married
now,
hoes?
you just ended your engagement? Your brother is surprised, Mr. Black.
After being thoroughly schooled by the judge, it was time for the results to be announced so that these guys could put all this behind them, and we can put an end to this madness. Here's the results of who was the father of little Viviana.
It has been determined her father is Mr. Blackman.
I told you.